Elon Musk buys a 9.2% worth of stock of Twitter amid complaints about free speech. So Tesla CEO Elon Musk now owns 9.2% of Twitter according to a 13G filing released today. Bloomberg News reports. According to the filing, Musk purchased the stake on March 14th, and Musk has long been one of Twitter's highest profile users and recently polled his over 80 million followers about the platform's adherence to free speech. Twitter's share price was up over 25% in pre-market trading on the news. CNBC notes that Musk's Twitter stocks were worth $2.89 billion based on Friday's closing price, and Musk shares are classified as a passive stake. But Wedbush analyst Dan Ives told CNBC that the purchase could lead to some sort of buyout. Musk had been publicly calling into question Twitter's approach to free speech via a poll conducted on his Twitter account on March 25th. Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle? The CEO asked, before noting in a follow-up tweet that the consequences of this poll will be important. And so basically said, do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle? 29.6% said yes, 70.4% said no, and there's over 2 million votes. Given that Twitter serves as the de facto public town square, failing to adhere to free speech principles fundamentally undermines democracy, Musk tweeted the following day before publicly asking whether a new platform is needed. Given that Musk purchased his stake in Twitter on March 14th, it appears as though these comments came after his decision to buy a stake. Earlier in the month, Musk said that he was a free speech absolutist after he claimed Starlink had been told by some governments to block access to Russian news sources. We will not do so unless at gunpoint, he said. Musk's use of Twitter has occasionally gotten the CEO into hot water. In 2018, he infamously tweeted that he had secured the funds to take Tesla private if it reached $420 a share. Eventually, it emerged that he had not secured funding for the sale, and Musk was forced by the Securities and Exchange Commission to have Tesla's lawyers pre-approve any tweets about the company's financial health, sales, delivery numbers, and more. Feel free to give your thoughts about this. And here's the thing. The way that I view it, Elon probably doesn't have that much power in terms of what he can really do with Twitter. That being said, it gives him access to maybe things that other people don't have access to, right? And what this could also mean is that potentially he might have access to some of the other shareholders that are involved in Twitter, and maybe we'll be able to convince them to think along the same lines of him, or maybe end up creating kind of like a competitor in a sense, right? Because they would have the skill sets of a lot of the people from Twitter moving on to another platform and potentially creating their own platform, which could be an option. Either way, he technically has already profited, I think, like 500 million, 600 million dollars, maybe even $1 billion. I don't know the exact price right now, but he's already profited a lot of money. So if he wanted to, he could just sell it, right? But although it probably has to be approved and all that kind of stuff, but he could technically just exit out with a good amount of money, right? Or this might be a play where he wants to be eventually bought out for a huge sum of money later down the line. You don't know, right? My line of thinking is that he simply is doing this, one, for fun, because he just feels like doing it. Two, probably for the access to see what's really going on in this company, to have like a more inside perspective, right? Because the reality is, if you're like a 9.2% shareholder, you're probably going to get a better understanding as to what's actually going on in this company, right? It's like, hey, what are the operations like in this company, right? What is going on? What are the business practices? What are you guys trying to do to make more revenue, right? So I think that'd probably be a pretty interesting thing as well. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think he's going to really have a lot of power.